Hey everybody, it's Ben again, and I just finished Actress in the House by Joseph McElroy, of course. Now, this is a great novel by his. I like this much better than Smuggler's Bible. But this novel is so Don DeLillo, it's almost more Don DeLillo than Don DeLillo. It, I would put it right up there with Underworld, in fact, just with all the major stylistic themes he goes for, being that seeking beauty in the mundane, broken dialogue, the everyday simple things, that interactions that people go through, and the meaning behind it and the implied meaning behind it. It is very much an old man novel in the sense also that he really takes his time. McElroy has nowhere to go. He has no rush. By the way, that is incense. It is much later in his biography, and it's just him kind of reminiscing on all the stuff that I think he is interested later on in his life, and all the things that makes him curious, and all the things that you don't really pay attention to in your youth, but things that become more apparent and become a larger part of your life in your older age. There are not too many spoilers in this review. I am going to spoil a few things here and there just because they're relevant to the plot or points of the thought that I think might help you out, because this novel does have some confusing sections. It's about a man and a woman who meet through two inciting incidences. The first inciting incident is actually the second one, that which we experience, the reader, being the titular slap at the cover page of the novel. Side note, much like Babel 17, where it shows a white woman on the novel, the main female character in this book, Becca, is Asian. So just a heads up, so you won't get confused when her brother, whose last name is Lane, comes into the story. He's at a play with his friend Helen, and he sees an actress get slapped on stage that's so hard that it draws blood and shocks the audience, and then her and him make eye contact. But prior to that, because we're going to get into it, there's a phone call that she makes to the main character, Daly, who was an attorney, to help her out with an eviction case that she's getting evicted from her apartment because she's not living there long enough. Now, the reason I say prior to that, and what's important about that, is that DeLillo really plays with time in this novel. He, especially in the first section of it, it gets really confusing. Death metal enthusiast George Sayles sent me an article saying how DeLillo talks about how he likes to play with space, the spatial surroundings of him between the characters and the setting and all the different places that they go to. And that is present in this book, but it just really, he plays with time as well a lot, where even more so than authors like Philip Roth, who don't mind going through it, he goes through different time periods, different sections of the characters' lives, not even from characters necessarily remembering, but he just full on switches into it with little headway into letting you know that the time period did shift. So especially at the beginning of the novel, you'll be reading stuff like, okay, Daly has a late wife, and then you realize he's talking to him like, wait, isn't this chick dead? But then you realize that no, it's just the different time periods that are going on. There's one, there's several years back, and then in the present one. And I'll go over some tips that confused me, that I had to look up. The Wikipedia page is pretty decent for some plot points. It doesn't address all of them, but there are, if you're getting a little lost, I don't think it's too bad to look at a little chart just to help you keep track of things. Kind of like if you read A Sound of Theory by Faulkner. Just kind of keeping track of all the different characters. It just helps you just a little bit, but not like a section by section part. And through that, him and the actress, who is much younger than him, get into a romantic relationship. And the book is very minimal in plot. It's just them two kind of going through their lives. She becoming more into her acting career, and also doing a one-man play that's autobiographical, that shows the level of incest within her life by her brother and father, and the incest between the brother and his stepmom. And this kind of shocks Daly, but she kind of doesn't really think much of it and just kind of takes it as normal, which goes into another theme of McElroy, which was in Cannonball, and that's almost casual or normalization of incest to a degree. Now, this channel talks a lot about incest, unfortunately, but with this one, unlike Cannonball, which is more like a healthy romantic relationship between brother and sister, this one, it's a lot more interesting. It's more nuanced in that Daly sees it as a almost horrific thing, but she doesn't. But then it really brings up the question, how much of a negative effect did it have on her life? Did it have a negative effect on her life? was it positive? But then she runs away from the family, and the brother's a very overbearing person as well. But you don't really get that clear answer onto how that affects her. But the taboo nature of it really, you react like Daly, where we're just like, oh, that's really bad. This sounds really negative. But she just doesn't see it that way. And, that is typical in incest in a lot of ways, where they didn't know it was a negative thing till much later in life. But she's in that later portion of life, and she's still like, whatever. This just is something that kind of happened. I'm wondering if any other McElroy books brings incest into question, but I would really like to see more of his thoughts upon that. And also, there's just some basic things in the book where, like almost the ever-present fear of cheating, of infidelity, lies within several characters. But the last major plot point I want to talk about is that, and I'm really glad I read this after Smuggler's Bible, because this was a major criticism I had in Smuggler's Bible. That's not a criticism here, because he uses it to great effect, is that the almost repetition of characters having the same job description, almost being like the same thing. Like in Smuggler's Bible, there was 3 different characters who were well-educated men who were dealing with women who were later became hysterical and difficult due to their actions or friends' actions, and it just became so repetitive, and I just didn't really see much distinction between the characters. However, in this book, you have the same thing, but he does it to an effect that it makes you really question the roles of what we typically think of this. So, for example, Daly has a brother named Wolf, who's a very rich person who's an engineer, and he and Daly are really close to each other, and Wolf left the family to go work in Australia and various other parts of the world in life after the military. His lover Becca has a brother. I almost said his brother Becca has a lover. His lover Becca has a brother who didn't leave the family and stay part of it. She left the family, but he's another rich entrepreneur who's making a lot of money compared to her. Now, those sound very similar, but the simple distinctions between the two of seeing that loving relationship between Wolf and Daly and the overbearing relationship between Bruce and Becca, it really, and then some other characters who have brothers as well, it really brings up the question of all the different iterations and variations of brother and the role that they can play within your life. Another example of that is Daly's lover Becca, and his first wife Della. Becca, Della, very similar, just kind of have that weird pseudo-rhyming scheme to them, but they're both artists. Della being a dancer who eventually wants to leave dancing and goes into teaching and eventually goes into swimming. Becca being an actress who's trying to make a career separate from her play as well. And it just kind of shows something on 2 levels. One, the characters do feel very different from each other. They feel like even though they're similar, they have different aspirations, but tangential to their art form as well. Della is the first wife is more leaving dancing because it's just taking such a toll on her body, while Becca wants to leave art just to make her own play and establish herself in that role, in her own role as well. But you really get a sense of the differences between them. Della seeing more like a loving wife and who's trying to just find her way after that, but also with Becca starting to get a lot more pugnacious and fighting against Daly and really separating herself from him and like getting really mad at him, even though he's in a lot of ways the sole provider. And it really also shows this great commentary on Daly, showing kind of that thing where you see people, they keep getting within the same relationships time and time after again. And why does Daly, who is this attorney, keep going for these archetype women who are almost somewhat fickle in their career, or either in a fickle career? All these different repetitions that we see throughout the book really just help serve a larger purpose than I feel Smuggler's Bible did. Now, an even bigger portion is that since with such a simple plot, it allows McElroy to have this very involved language. Again, this is an old man book. It is not a fast read. It is slow, and even though it has simple language, you really have to pay attention because McElroy does not give a lot of clues to location, time, or even who is speaking. Sometimes you're like, wait, I think I know who's talking, but am I right? And you're like, okay, he will let you know later on, but it's just something you really have to pay attention to by line level. You really can't skip anything, or you might be lost for like another paragraph or so. And again, I hate to compare McElroy, but he has a very Don DeLillo-ish style in this novel, where he just has so many different divergence into topics that seem so mundane, whether it be like infrastructure, algae, turkeys, and it really makes you wonder, why is he talking about all this? And one thing I thought of, I have two kind of theories about this. They might be intertwined also. Now, this is super bedroom thought, so bear with me. So, with the turkeys, he sees a turkey in Australia that held by a beautiful teenager, I know, and it has all this like debris, like glass and gravel, in its guttural thing, and then later on they have turkey for Thanksgiving. The thought process that I came to, I woke up one morning before I went back to sleep, is that if you take Benjamin Franklin's idea of the turkey and how it's supposed to be a symbol of peace, and it's shown in two different countries, one for Thanksgiving where it's being carved up, and one in Australia where it's like it's damaged with all the gravel in its guttural thing. It's showing how it kind of relates to the thing in the sense that both countries killed their Aboriginal people. Now, does that mean that every single thing that McElroy talks about within this novel has some deeper symbolism like that? No. That my take on the turkey symbolism is correct. Not necessarily, I don't know. But it gets you thinking. It gets you sitting around the gravity of what these mundane occurrences and objects truly represent. And I think one part of it, this is a slight theory I have, is that it's almost trying to put a more religious context, in a sense, back to these objects that we don't even think about. For example, in Indian culture, Native American culture a lot, they worship the corn. Because why? The corn is life-giving to them. It's a sound structure part of their economy, their lifestyle, their eating. And if you look back in a lot of ancient religions, basic stuff is just deified. Like, the Aztecs have a god for rain, but they also have a god for rugs. So that special drink, to the gods. It's all these different small little things that we take for granted, but it serves a symbolic purpose because it's just a large part of the society. For example, there's a city in Mexico right now that doesn't have enough water and has easier access to Coca-Cola. So people drink it every day. Now they're using Coca-Cola within their rituals as offering, to the spiritual figures or the deceased figures. So by focusing on these and focusing on little details of this, it almost brings back that mysticism to objects that we see every day. And a good example of that is, I think, one might be hitting the mark is, he's in Japan at one point, and it shows like the kelp harvest and how the kelp is such a large part of this smaller community, and just kind of and it's just kind of out there, doesn't really relate too much in the larger narrative, but it might relate to it in that symbolic sense with the writing. Another thing is that McElroy talks about the Dasein, the being within the world, being a Heidegger ideology of the ontic relationship with the world, not so much the spatial by Heidegger, in that with our designated space in the world, but a designated role in the world. And that's such a key feature because, like with all the jobs I talk about, role is such an important thing in the world. In this book, the role of a lawyer, the role of a play actor, what kind of actress does she want to be, the role of a dancer, the role of a brother, the role of a lover, the role of a business partner, a business partner who does something later on that's not the best, and all these different aspects. And seeing that term several times, I'm pretty sure McElroy was directly referencing Heidegger, because he even put it in quotation marks, the being of in the world, a direct quote from Heidegger translated. And with all that, this book is just, again, I'd put it on the level of Underworld. If you love those books where nothing happens but you love it, it is top tier for it. I would probably say it's more confusing than Faulkner in some areas. It's not as hard as Cannonball or Plus by him, but it is a very intensive book, and it's not going to be a fast read, but it is going to be a beautiful read. I will say though, I think this is something I would enjoy later on in life. I'm a desperate reader, like Robert Bolano would say, so a book with a bunch of old manisms doesn't always necessarily catch my interest, but I feel like this is something where you can appreciate much later on in life. And all the different paths that he takes down, and all the different small things that he focuses on that we don't even appreciate now. We don't even give a second thought. Like, I barely think of the architect of this place, and he has so many dissertations on architecture in the book. And so many different, even political dissertations and philosophical, like German authors and whatnot. But I think I didn't focus that on as much because I feel like the main role of this book is just bringing beauty and bringing that significance and gravity to everyday life whether it be very mundane or really be culturally relevant, and just the different facets of love and the development and arc of love. Now, if you want to read it based off that, click off the video because here's some spoiler things. I kind of said some earlier, but Becca's brother Becca gets slapped by her brother, somebody who's acting as her brother in the play. Not her real brother, just the brother in the play. Her brother Bruce is later on in the future, appears later on. Her play is autobiographical and it shows that level of innocence. Della is dead. She passed out by failing. Rue Diamond did slap her when she was giving her swim lessons and she fell, but that didn't kill her. Daly does have a world war experience where he is in a chopper and there's a bunch of Cambodian refugees. Even though it referenced the Vietnam War, I guess I have to check if the Cambodians were the war, but I know that's a separate place and we had a separate thing with him. But he's given the controls where he's not ready to pilot it, and the ship goes sideways and all the people fall out and they die, and one of them was a teenage girl. It's kind of implied that he did that because he felt like the other soldiers were gonna rape the teenage girl. So how much control did he have over it or not? Van Diamond is Rue Diamond. It's like phonetically spelled, but I don't know how to pronounce the actual name of it. At the beginning of the book, there's a backstory about the brother and she telling the brother about adultery and everything and ruining his relationship. That's a story within the play and not actual events with her actual brother. That confused me as well. And that's some key points. If you have any more questions about parts of the book, the Wikipedia page has some, a basic summary that's not going to spoil too much for you. And feel free to leave something in the comments or message me if you have any questions. But I would absolutely recommend this book. This is great, and I have more McElroy to read, and have a good day.